Alright, so in this video, we are going to be going over who the best players available after the draft who are still available. We're going to be going over the defensive end position, linebacker position, and safety. In my opinion, defensive end position is the biggest need for the Detroit Lions by far. Safety, the second biggest need, and then linebacker, the third need. Might also go over some cornerbacks just because Avonte Maddox could switch to safety, so maybe a couple cornerbacks, just glance through it. Same with potentially tight end threes. The Lions still potentially could use a tight end in that tight end room. But we're going to primarily focus on defensive end, linebacker, and safety. There's still a lot of good defensive ends still available, but it's also very slim. There's a lot of good players still out there, but the room is very slim. I don't know what just happened. Ben and Jerry's, I don't know what's going on. Let me see if okay. This is two times. In the past like 5 videos I made that an ad has just interrupted my video. I'm going to reload this whole video. I'm going to have to not reload this whole video. Jesus, I might as well. Reload this whole website. Might as well just play the Jeopardy music in the background at this point. It's unreal. Been about that long. Alright. Finally, we're back here. There's a lot of good players at the defensive end position still available, but it's a very slim market. There's only like 6 or 7 guys that are still out there who would probably legitimately even have a chance to make the 53-man roster. Von Miller is still out there. He is arguably the best defensive end still out there. His talent is still insane. He's got rare talent. Now, he doesn't have as much like talent that he used to have, obviously. He used to be one of the best defensive ends in football just a couple years ago. The guy's not really any better than a defensive end 2 or 3 at this point in his NFL career, but he has such a good bend and get off the line of scrimmage that would make its team still want to sign him. His production's not nearly the same. He's only going to get you about 5 to 6 sacks a season at most, but still has insane talent. Still can't get after the quarterback, just not nearly as much. But if the Lions could bring him in for like $4 million, I would definitely do it. He could be a very interesting pickup for the Lions. Matt Judon is also still out there. I'm not as high on Matt Judon. Extremely old as well as Von Miller. Matt Judon was horrible this past season for the Falcons. He did have like 5 sacks, but only had like 25 pressures. Just was not consistent getting to the quarterback. Looked old. Not really high on him anymore. Was arguably one of the best defensive ends in football just 2 seasons ago. I believe had 17 sacks with the Patriots back in 2022, and then 2023 he had like 4. I think he had like 4 sacks in 2 games or 3 games or something like that before he went down with the season-ending injury with the Patriots. So he's very good in that time period, and even before that. But he was really bad at the Falcons this season. But I mean, shoot, if a team would really take him for really cheap, $3 million, I think that's an absolute steal. Don't really view him as an edge 2 anymore. Pretty much view him fully as an edge 3, but he could be also very interesting. Preston Smith is also still out there. He had a down year last year. I think he only had like 4 sacks last year, 3 or 4 sacks. He usually averages more around like 8 to 9 sacks per season. Very consistent edge, big edge. Can play in the interior, more of an edge though. He could be interesting. Always been a fan of him. I actually said the Lions should have traded for him in the trade deadline last year before he got traded. I'm like, a sneaky trade candidate that is out there could be Preston Smith from the Packers. And what do you know? He ended up getting traded. Nobody else was talking about it, even thought he was available besides me, and he ended up getting traded. So it's pretty heated when that happened at the time. But he's now available and could be interesting for the Lions. Zadarius Smith, like we said, like we know, is still out there. He's my number 1 target for the Lions. That's still available in free agency. Would love him back. Jadeveon Clowney got released from the Panthers about a week ago when you're seeing this video. He is very interesting. I believe he had 5, 6 sacks for the Panthers this past season and had 9 the year before with Baltimore. Former number 1 overall pick. Has never lived up to number 1 overall pick, but has always been a good edge number 2. He is arguably the second or even best defensive end available. I would probably say Zadarius Smith's the best available, then Jadeveon Clowney, then Von Miller. But you could argue between me with Von Miller and Jadeveon Clowney is the second best. Jadeveon Clowney, he has a lot of talent. You can see it on the field, but he just doesn't have insane production and is not always consistent. But I'd love the Lions bringing Jadeveon Clowney, but they won't. I'm pretty sure it had some history in the past with some stuff. DeMarcus Walker, the Lions brought him in for a visit before the draft. He could also be interesting. He's not very consistent. He's not very productive when it comes to like sacks and stuff like that, pressures. He's more of a DE4 for me, DE3. Definitely not a starter, but could be a decent add to that defensive end room. He'll get you like 3 to 4 sacks a season. That's what he does every single year. His most sacks he has had in one year, I think, was 6 or 7 about 3 or 4 years ago, and he's literally got 3 or 4 sacks every year since, and even before that. So that's what he's gonna get. He's gonna get you 3 or 4 sacks a season. Um, Kind of reminds me of John Kaminsky a lot. Can play in the interior and outside, more of a defensive end. Doesn't have a great get off, but he can get you pressures and stuff like that, just not consistently, and not high production. Brandon Graham is retired. John Comiskey also retired. Dennis Gardeck. Dennis Gardeck, he's more of an inside linebacker to me, but you know who this guy reminds me of. He is my second biggest target for the Detroit Lions, who is still available, is Dennis Gardeck. He can play on the inside, more of an inside linebacker, but man, he reminds me of Andrew Van Ginkel from the Vikings, who was on the Dolphins previously. Andrew Van Ginkel balled out for the Vikings last year. I'm pretty sure Van Ginkel ended up with 11 and a half or 12 sacks last year for the Vikings. Was phenomenal throughout the first half and middle of the season. Kind of died down towards the end, but was still very good. Um, he plays exactly like Van Ginkel. He's smaller than Van Ginkel. Van Ginkel is a big linebacker. I think Van Ginkel is like 6'2", 6'3", like 240 pounds. Dennis Gardeck, I think, is like only like 230, and like 5'11" or something like that. But man, he can get after the quarterback. When you watch the film, very good get off, has a really good spin move for a linebacker. He's a very good pass rushing linebacker, inside linebacker. Essentially, an Alex Anzalone, just 2, 3 times better rushing the passer. Has the big long hair as well. He was, if you don't remember, he was arguably the best. He was the defensive player of the year head runner throughout like the first 5 or 6 weeks of last season. He ended up getting hurt with like a season-ending injury, I think in like week 7 or week 8 last year. But he was one of the best, if not the best, defensive player in football to start last season. He was one of the head runners of the defensive player of the year when it first started. I don't know his name. I don't know how he's still available. He's on the older side. But man, if the Lions could bring in Dennis Gardeck to be like linebacker 5/defensive end 5 or something like that, and then still bring back Zadarius Smith, or even if they just sign Dennis Gardeck, that helps out the defensive room and linebacker room. Two with one. You kill two birds with one stone. That would be a phenomenal pickup. He is my number 2 target for the Detroit Lions that is still available behind Zadarius Smith. Love Dennis Gardeck. You'd probably be able to get him cheap since he's on the older side and he's coming off of a season-ending injury as well. His market value, I believe, is set at, let's see here, $5 million. He's not going to go for that much since he's still available. He'll probably go for around 4 or somewhere around there, and I'm 100% doing that if I'm the Detroit Lions. Shaq Thompson's still out there. More of an inside linebacker if the Lions got him, though, as a linebacker 5. I love it. Always been productive and good. Jerry Hughes is still out there. Really old. Was healthy scratch most of the last season with the Texans, but had about, I think, 10 sacks just 2 or 3 seasons ago. And was even decently productive last season with the Texans. I think he had 4 sacks in 2023 with the Texans. I think he only had 1 or 2 sacks this past year with the Texans, but can still have to get after the quarterback. Kind of reminds me of Romeo Okwara a little bit. Essentially the same thing as Romeo Okwara. The Lions brought him in to be like DE5, DE6 to compete with like, with Nate Lynn and UDFA and stuff like that. Bring some veteran experience to that defensive end room. I would absolutely love it. I mean, shoot, maybe he can return to his 2022 self right at 10 sacks. Maybe you never know. Dwayne Smoot, he's still out there, more of a defensive tackle to me, but he can get after the quarterback if he's a defensive tackle. More of a defensive tackle, but he can't get after the quarterback. Not insanely productive. Has had a couple of down years now, but he could also be interesting for the Lions. Um, Would not be mad at him at all. I don't not anybody else that really shocks my interest here. Jonathan Bullard and Howard Ward could be both interesting. William Golston, I don't know how he's still in the NFL. He has not done anything in like 5 seasons. Travis Gibson, the Lions brought him in for a tryout during rookie minicamp. I really wanted the Lions to sign him. They still have not signed him. He did not play last season. I'm pretty sure he got hurt with a season-ending injury. On the younger side, for the guys who are still available, only 28 years old. Um, he actually got traded last season, I believe, from the Seahawks to somewhere. I think he got traded to the Jets or somewhere like that for a 6th round pick and then got hurt. but he had 7 sacks, I think, just 3 years ago with the Bears in 11 games or something like that. He was very, very productive. Um, he could be a very interesting, very underrated pickup for the Detroit Lions. I would still love for the Detroit Lions to end up bringing in Travis Gibson. He'd be the veteran minimum too. Be a great pickup. Shaq Barrett's still out there. Retired last season after he signed with the Dolphins, and came back within the final 2 weeks of the season, signing with the Bucks before they lost in the wild card round. Played 2 games for them, didn't have a sack, but had, I believe, 19 sacks. I think in 2021 or 2020 he had 19 sacks. Very productive player. But again, he hasn't essentially played in 2 years this upcoming season. He'll be the vet minimum. Um, but I'd love for the Lions to bring him in. Carl Lawson's also still out there. I think he had 6 sacks with Dallas last year. I was hoping the Lions would have signed him. He didn't get signed until I think right before the season or during the middle of the season. He had, again, 5 or 6 sacks, I think 13 or 14 games. Decently productive and consistent, but he can get after the quarterback. He was really good with the Jets, so I'm Matt the Lions brought him in. Tyus Bowser is interesting. He's always either healthy scratcher, he's playing, and he's playing a decent level. He could be interesting. And besides that, James Houston's still out there. I mean, at this point, if the Lions brought back James Houston, that to me would equal as a guy like Dennis Gardeck or Preston Smith to me at that point. That's how much I'm desperate at this point. And I'm not a big fan of James Houston at all. Now let's look at safety. Just scroll this because this video is already pretty long. I want to keep it under 20 minutes. Marcus Williams is still out there. The safety room is also still very talented. There's been some safeties falling off the board. Demonte Casey, um, what's his name? From the Jags. Brayshawn Jenkins has gone off the table. So the safety market is starting to fly, but there's still a lot of good players still out there and is deep as well. Marcus Williams was like a top 3 safety in football just 2 or 3 years ago. He was horrible, horrible with the Baltimore Ravens last year. But he's a nice guy, a great player. Um, Not a starter anymore, especially after you had last year. But it could be a very, very good safety 3, safety 4. I'd love for the Lions to bring him in. He would probably be very cheap as well after the year he had last year. Justin Simmons is still out there. He's the best safety still out there. He's definitely dipped in production and productivity over the past 2 or 3 seasons, but he's still a starting safety in the NFL. Not really safety 1, but a good safety 2 in the league. Played with the Falcons last year. Was okay with the Falcons. Um, Probably want to be signed with the Lions, but I think he wants to go to the Eagles. I read an article or something like that. But he could be interesting for. He probably cost around the same money in the last year, 7.5. So I mean, if he was said for 6 mil, I don't know if I'd do it just because I don't know if we need a safety 3 that bad. Um, but he could be interesting. Jordan Whitehead is also very interesting to be a safety 3. Always been a good safety on the cusp of a starter, but a very, very good backup. Julian Blackman, he is arguably the best safety as well, still out there. He's definitely a starter. He is a long-term option at the safety position too. Not even 27 years old yet. Was very good with Indianapolis. Not an elite safety or anything like that, but he was very good with them. I'd love for the Lions to get Julian Blackman. Maybe they could work out like a C.J. Gardner-Johnson type deal for him, like they did with Gardner Johnson back in 2023. For under what his value was supposed to be. Stays 1 year here and then gets the bag somewhere else. Could be something like that. Quandre Diggs, he's one of my top targets at the safety position that's still out there. I'd love for him to come back to Detroit. Got hurt with Tennessee early in the season last year, the season ending, I think, torn triceps or something like that. Um, but was, again, one of the better safeties in football with the Seahawks. Love for him to come back if he wants to come back. I don't know if he feels disrespected by the Lions organization or not, but I don't know. He'd be the veteran minimum, and he would be a fantastic safety 3 and teach the young guys like Dane Jackson, Maurice Norris. I mean, even Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph. So I'd love for Quandre Diggs to come back. He's one of my top targets still available. Chuck Clark, I'm pretty sure he got released at the end of last season. He could be interesting, though. Still a decent productive player. Jordan Poyer was not good last season. I think he wants to go back to Buffalo, I think, for his final year in the NFL. But he could be an interesting player as well. He used to be one of the better safeties in football 2 or 3 years ago. Kavon Wallace could be interesting. Not as high on him, but he could be interesting. Marcus May could also be interesting. Was really, really good with the Jets a couple of years ago, and then just dropped in production. And these past couple of seasons. Not that great anymore, but could be an interesting safety 3. John Johnson is available every single season, it feels like, for the past 3 or 4 seasons. He's always been available at this point, and I've always won the Lions to get him. Still on the younger side, 29 years old. Would again probably cost we did the last year 1.3. And it would be well worth that. Never really, his used to be a starter, used to be a really good starter. Not really a starter anymore, but has always been a really, really good safety 3. And I'd love for the Lions to bring him in, especially for that price. Rodney McLeod, not as high on him. Deshaun Gibson didn't really play last year. Von Bell could be interesting. He was not good last year, not really good the year before either. Ryan Neal, he was available essentially for all last year on the Bucks practice squad, but I always liked him on the Bucks previous years, but he'll probably do the same thing as he was last year, end up on a practice squad and then go from there. But I like if the Lions brought in Ryan Neal. And then at the linebacker position, um, not a lot of guys still out there at the linebacker position. I'm talking about inside linebackers here. C.J. Mosley's the best one available. He's a starter in the NFL still. But if the Lions could somehow pull off C.J. Mosley, I'd love it. He definitely, in my opinion, fits us. Juwan Bentley, he got released to the field physical, so I don't know what's going on with him. Very underrated linebacker, not an elite linebacker, but on the cusp of the starter, but very good backup. Kaiser White, love Kaiser White. If the Lions can somehow pull off Kaiser White, I would love that. Very underrated player, especially with the Cardinals last year, and especially with the Eagles as well. I'd love for the Lions to bring him in. Devondre Campbell will not play. His NFL career is done, especially after what he did last year. Jalen Reed could be interesting to bring back. Like I already talked about Dennis Gardeck, Shaq Thompson as well. I already talked about. Eric Kendricks could also be very interesting. He'd be near the veteran minimum. Played pretty decent with Dallas this past year on the older side. Was really good with Minnesota about 4 or 5 years ago. And then was not so good when he left Minnesota, but was still decent and was decent with Dallas. Would be very interesting to be linebacker 5. Chris Barnes is interesting as well. Underrated player. Was decent with the Packers. Not as high on him anymore, but he could still be interesting. Um, Nick Vigil is still out there. Maybe interesting. I'd love the Lions bring back Ben Neiman. I don't think they will, though. And that is it for inside linebackers. Smaller market for inside linebackers who are still out there. Not a big market for inside linebackers. Um, and then we'll glance through cornerback and tight end 3 here, and then we'll wrap this video up. We're literally going to glance through. I'm not going to really talk about anybody here. There's a guy who catches my mind, catches my eye. James Bradbury can be interesting from can play corner and safety. Pretty sure he wants to play corner though. Has had 2 down years now. C.J. Henderson could be interesting. Former first round pick, has been a bust, but never thought he was that bad, honestly, from what people said he was. Mosley could be interesting to bring back. At this point, I want to be Matt the Lions brought him back from how they've handled the cornerback position. Asante Samuel. If the Lions could somehow bring in Asante Samuel, kind of what they did with C.J. Gardner-Johnson a couple years back, love it. Absolutely love Asante Samuel. I don't know how he's still available. He's got to become, because of the season-ending injury he had this past season, that has to be the reason why. But man, he is such a good cornerback. He's a cornerback 1 if healthy. He is such a good cornerback. I remember when he had 3 picks against the Jags in the postseason game, in the wild card game 2 or 3 years ago. He is such a good cornerback, man. So good in coverage. The Lions could somehow bring him in for really like $7 million, something like that. I would honestly do it. I don't know what type of role he would have. Maybe a move like Avonte Max safety, have Rakestraw play a little bit of safety. I don't know. But man, I would love his. It won't happen. But if they could bring in Asante Samuel, I would literally jump out of my chair. Um, Cam Sutton, yeah, he's not coming back. Fabian Moreau, maybe interesting. Eli Apple, not be a Detroit Lion. Jalen Mills, no, not be a Detroit Lion. Unless he wants to reunite with DJ Reed, but that'd be the only reason why. Jack Jones is out there, could be very interesting, potentially a CB5, CB6 role. And that's about it that catches my mind. Caleb Farley's could be interesting, former first round pick, but Titans has always gotten hurt. Not been a great player when healthy, but he could be interesting. And now let's look at tight end 3, and then we'll wrap the video up. Got a little bit longer than what I want it to be, but it is what it is. Mercedes Lewis, he fits the Lions. Could see the Lions signing him. Not really high on him anymore. I don't know how he keeps sticking around. He's like the oldest player in football besides the quarterback position. He's 41. Jordan Akins. I love Jordan Akins. He is my number one tight end target for the Lions. Who's still out there. Always been productive as backup tight end. Always been the best, one of the best, if not the best backup tight end in football these past couple of years. He'll get you like 200, 300 yards every year as a backup tight end and can always start if needed. Would love if the Lions brought in Jordan Akins. CJ Uzama didn't play a whole lot last year, but was really productive with Cincy in years past, 4 years ago. Hayden Hurst could be very interesting. Has been down. He got hurt last year. The Chargers where it wasn't very productive when healthy, but I've always liked him as a backup tight end. Nick Van Nett could be interesting. Always very productive. Will get you touchdowns, 200 yards every year. Very underlooked and underrated tight end. Like the Lions brought him in. Geoff Swain could be interesting. That's pretty much it. Hey, if the Lions brought back Anthony Firkser, I'd love that. Always been a Firkser guy. He was good with Tennessee like 4 or 5 years ago. I know it was a long time ago, but he was really, really good as backup tight end with them. Hendershot could be interesting, but that's about it. So, one Pride Go Lions. My top 5 free agents for the Detroit Lions sign who are still available. If I had to list it in order, would be Zadarius Smith 1, Dennis Gardeck 2. Um, We'll go Devion Clowney 3, Quandre Diggs 4. This is real. This is what I would say is realistic for the Lions. Like I would love for them to sign Asante Samuel, Julian Blackmon, but that won't happen. Quandre Diggs 4, and then I would probably go Von Miller 5. That would be my top 5 free agents that I want the Detroit Lions to sign. But one probably go Lions. Hope they sign one of those guys. But hey, if they can get any defensive end, I don't care who it is, any defensive out of previous production or production, even just last year, I will take it. I do not care if it is what's his face from the Bills, Shane Ray, who hasn't played in 6 years. If the Lions brought him back, I don't care if it's Ziggy Ansah if the Lions brought him back. I do not care. Get a defensive end in the building. One Pride Go Lions.